Hello?
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good.
Good. So you're unmuted. I'm gonna mute all. I'm gonna do that.
I think disconnect audio.
What'd you say?
I think we might have to disconnect audio. We have to
Why?
play with it to keep people from being able to. Oh no, that's not right. Okay, we'll play with it this weekend and stuff. I mean, this week.
So what'll happen here is still just the two of us here
Yeah.
online. We're gonna have to edit this part of the video.
Why?
When we send the recap recording, we don't want to have this conversation on it. So we'll edit this part out.
Yeah, we should be able to edit.
So I'm sharing. It's still just the two of us, which is good. And allow participants to rename themselves, yes. Mute participants on entry, yes, but it didn't mute you. So I just have everyone muted at the moment, so that should work.
Okay.
And I took off the ability to allow participants to unmute themselves, so we should be all set. I'm going to mute myself on here right now.
Me too.
And then
Actually, I don't know.
you and I can text. Does
Yep,
that work?
that works.
Okay, good. Thanks.
I'm gonna mute myself. You might have to unmute me again.
Samantha, maybe you can write directly to me in the chat box, but if for some reason my computer crashes or closes or whichever, I would just need you to jump in for me, and I'll do the same for you.
Okay.
Okay, you're not unmuted. Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name's Millie Smith, and I'll be leading this webinar with Samantha Petrie-Quillen, and we're really excited that you've joined. We ask that you put your phone and your computer on mute and turn off your video. And also, throughout the webinar, please write your questions into the chat box, and we will answer them at the end. So let's get started. So we're super excited to share strategies to lead your remote team, and we've created a simple agenda to follow. We're going to begin with introductions, and then we're going to walk you through our framework for supporting newly remote teams, or even supporting teams if you've been working remote. And we've simplified it to 6 C's. We call it the 6C framework. It begins with collect and clarify, then create community, collaborate, connect, and celebrate. And Samantha and I will walk you through these steps so that you can get the most out of your new remote team. Then we're going to move on to how we can work together to get virtual working bliss for you and your team. We'll answer some of your questions and wrap up with how you can stay connected with us after the webinar. So let's begin with introductions. Once again, I'm Millie Smith. I'm the CEO of Manageroo. After 15 years of leading teams in both the retail and workforce development sector and supporting global organizations with innovation projects, I launched Manageroo, an online marketplace for teams. I launched Manageroo to support teams at working smarter and happier by getting the best resources and tools available to teams faster. And so I'm really excited to share our remote team tools with you today. Samantha?
Hi, everybody. I am Samantha Petrie-Quillen, and I have well over 15 years of experience leading, building, and scaling advanced teams, some remote, some locally to the New York City tech sector. I have managed teams that have worked in Singapore, New York City, LA, Tel Aviv, and beyond. And so I am really excited to help share what I know about remote teams and about getting best in class working environments, whether you're remote or you're in office. So we're super excited today, and we're grateful that you've decided to join us.
Yes. And so a week ago, Samantha and I, we've both been working with teams on our individual projects, but with the updates on the coronavirus and how it's impacting our lives as a whole, and seeing how quickly things were progressing, we wanted to work together to take the tools we've been using with global teams, both local and remote, and provide them to you with this webinar, and provide additional services as needed. And so we got together and decided we want to jump in and be hands-on to make sure teams are doing well during the COVID-19 phase that has really changed our lives. And so with that, I'm going to jump right into the framework we believe will support you in leading your new remote team. So to start, we have a poll because we want to kind of get an assessment of who's on the call and how you all are feeling. So if you can use the chat box, could you describe how things are going for you and your remote team now via emoji? So we have happy, we have indifferent, sad, confused. How are you feeling?
Okay. So I've got happy for folks. Definitely we have a fuse. We've got some busy. Okay, hopefully we can address that as well. Somebody else said that they were happy and sad. Someone else said that they were happy. Okay, so for the most part, you guys seem to be in good space. And we're really excited because we believe that this framework can get some of those busy, confused emojis. It can get everyone to happy.
Exactly.
So let's dive in.
Exactly. Great. So let's jump into our 6C framework. The first two are collect and clarify. Now, for those of you who may not be systems people, I'm going to ask you to hold on and stay with me because I want to speak about building a foundation to ensure that you remain happy or you get to happy long term too. And so our first step that we believe is important for leading your new remote team is to collect the necessary information you need to clarify to your teams the next steps during this coronavirus period and long term. So the way that works is you create a briefing to assess your current situation. The briefing is broken down into a few parts, but really what you want to do is to make sure that you are outlining all of the factors of your current situation and what your targets are, your objectives are, and goals are, so that your team is clear on your action plan during this period of time. So I'm going to go a little bit more in detail as to what I mean. When you create a briefing, what you're doing is assessing your full situation. It will allow you to take a step back and take a deep breath, because this really has thrusted many of us into working, having a 100% remote team when we hadn't planned for it. So a briefing allows you to first kind of anchor yourself, write out your current situation and plan for the future. So I have a few questions here that can guide you to creating a good briefing. So reminding your team of the company's purpose. So you've all been doing really good work together, probably for a long time. So it's easy to assume that everyone knows the purpose, but when our lives are shifted, especially teams experience a shift as drastic as we're experiencing currently, it's often helpful to remind the team of the purpose. So we would say, create a briefing. At the top of the briefing, add your purpose. Then outlining the situation. Use a journalistic style approach to outlining what you're currently going through and putting the details on it, not so much the emotion of it, but really how it's impacting your team. So for example, we're distributed across 3 locations around the city. Some have technology, some do not. We have to service customers who might have technology issues. So you really want to assess what is the current situation you're faced with. Then move into your short-term and long-term milestones, outlining what those are. Then outlining your team objectives for this period of time, what targets and goals you want to achieve, and how you're going to measure success during this period of time. So now you may wonder, we started a webinar and we've jumped right into so much information that you have to gather. But we start out with collect and clarify, because honestly, once you have these questions answered, you're able to ensure that you and your team are aligned and plan for your next steps, and without there being too much confusion now that you are all distributed at different locations. One thing I would recommend with creating your briefing is that you don't focus so much on it being super fancy or super high level. You ultimately want it to be something that you can then share with your team and build your action plan and share the action plan steps with them. So you can keep it very simple. You just want the quality of the content to be there, that everyone can be on the same page about what's the current situation and how you plan to move forward. And so I have here a roadmap as a part, the question that I said, outline your short and long-term milestones. This is a visual roadmap that we use when we're working on projects to outline what's relevant now, what's relevant then, later, and maybe, so that you can plan your steps. You can plan and visualize all the steps that you're going to take during this time. So that's our briefing. That's the beginning for collect and clarify. Once you have your draft briefing outlined with your summary of what's going on, your roadmap for how you plan to move forward, and your goals and KPIs outlined for your team with their action steps, do a listening tour. Send the briefing to everyone on your team or your managers, depending on the size of your team, and get to your final draft. With that final draft, you can build out an action plan and really kind of give some directives or break it into additional projects with your team. So that's where we think you should begin. It builds a really solid and strong foundation for you to get more done faster as a newly remote team. With that, we want to move on to our next polling question before we move on to the other steps.
We're excited. We want to know, what do you ultimately want from this, right? Because I think everybody wants some different outcomes. So do you want ultimately for your fully remote team to spark the culture at your company to offer more flexibility for work from home options? Do you want to increase your team members' autonomy during this time, and hopefully that will trickle over when we get back to our office locations? Maybe you just want to achieve the standard goals and deliverables that you guys have been tasked with before Corona. Or maybe you just want to deliver those consistently. And maybe you want to shift the way your team approaches collaboration or teamwork. You know, what are the outcomes that you want to see happen as a result of this time? And if you have an other that's not listed there, you can feel free to add that in. Okay, so I've heard, I've got some people that said, a lot of C's. Really? Okay. So a lot of people want to want just to kind of maintain, someone said they want to improve communication. Yeah, that's coming up. So we've got that definitely. More flexibility, more engagement. Somebody else said that. So that's super exciting too. I think you're going to find the answers to all of that as we move through. So yeah, let's move on to the next step in our framework.
Yeah, so I'll move on to the next part. And I wanted, before I do that, add one more point about the collect and clarify, because so many people have achievement of goals and standards. There, you really want to spend a little bit more time on building your framework through getting a briefing and providing next steps, because that'll really help to ensure that your team is clear on what those goals and deliverables are, and that you feel like you have a pulse on how you're doing, because now you're distributed and you're not in one office. Okay. The next C is create community. This is one of my favorite because it's really about how we work together and how we communicate. So the communication person, this is going to be your part. So what we recommend is that you establish a guide for how you work and communicate together, and we broke them into two areas: community codes and communication codes. Now, the word code sounds really kind of strong and maybe isn't flexible. We don't mean it in that way. We're speaking more about kind of how the agreements you make as a team to get awesome work done. Some of this is very easy to do when you're in one central location. Because you're either a newly remote team or the circumstances of how you work together remotely has changed, we recommend revisiting these ways of creating community and communicating and being intentional now, because often when our work environments or situations change, team members do not automatically assume, let's go back to what the standard was in the office. So you really want to revisit them or establish them if you don't have them in place. And so let me go in a little bit into detail as to what we mean by this. So here on the screen is an example of community codes and communication codes. So this is an example of what Samantha and I are doing. We're a newly remote team around this particular project, but these are the things we've done for years over our collective 30 years of experience with teams. So community codes, how we work together. You can see here an example of one is that we create a briefing for all at the beginning of both of our projects. We communicate when we're overwhelmed. We celebrate our successes and challenges at the end of each project that we're working on. And we have fun with our projects. So this is an example of community codes. And next I'll show you a few questions that you can ask your team as you're creating these. This also, once again, shouldn't be a long, robust project where you're spanning across weeks, depending on the size of your team. I would suggest breaking it into smaller groups of teams and then creating the community codes amongst that team. So if you are an executive and you have 4 or 5 different managers reporting to you, you can then you can have them break them up amongst those teams, and then you guys finalize them together. Then when you speak about communication codes, we're really talking about how we plan to make communication easy for us as a team. And so when you start with the community codes, you're speaking about how we work together and sort of what our values are and what are the things that our culture is as a whole. But communication has changed so much now that we're all working remote, that it's even more important to outline what the platforms are that you use for communication and suggest how it's used. So for example, you can see here with our communication codes on this sheet that we have a way of using message boards such as Slack or Skype, right? So if it's a quick yes, no question, or if we're going to share something kind of funny that will help motivate to boost the team or get everyone laughing, we may use a text message platform. However, if it's something really urgent where we need to ensure that every single team member knows about this update, we may schedule a quick huddle just to say, hey, here's something urgent that's happening, and back it up with an email. So we kind of creating a little bit of a guide on the best ways to communicate as a team can help prevent receiving so many emails. Think about the amount of emails we received when we were in the office right next to each other, where you can maybe shout over to your coworker just a few feet away. We still had inboxes full. So now that everyone's remote, I can only imagine how your inboxes have blown, right? And we want to make sure that teams we're not over emailing or on a conference call, 3-4 conference calls every day, where your time is really spent mostly checking emails or just discussing things versus getting actual critical work done. And so we want to help you get your to-do list done. So if you put some of these things, guides around which platforms you use and the best ways to communicate with it, coupled with the rules of engagement of how we work together, it will help you to improve your communication. It'll help your team members to make decisions without having to over email you or have a million phone calls or conference calls with questions, they can feel they have a level of independence with making decisions in alignment with your community codes. And also it ensures that you're not burnt out from over meeting. Okay, and so what we do, we have a few questions here for you that you can use for developing your community codes and developing communication. So for community codes, asking how do we ensure that we are all engaged? How do we ensure that we avoid burnout? How do we ensure that we keep our customers as a priority? Because although our lives have changed drastically, we still are here to serve our customers. So how do we stay focused on the mission, on the purpose? Some questions around the communication codes. Which platforms do we use? When should we use them, right? How much notice do you need for meetings? And also, what is the right amount of communication? So that you have time to get work done, but you have just enough communication to be prepared for all of the work that you need to do. Okay, great. So far we've talked about collect and clarify, outlining your situation, providing clear next steps. Then we spoke about how we work together in this new world, this new norm, and the best ways of communicating. And so now we want to talk about show you our new normal. So I took a moment to share this video about our new normal because for many of us who are currently working from home, we have new coworkers. So we have the coworkers we talk to online, but we also have our new coworkers at home. Everyone remembers this video and how funny it was. This gentleman's, he's so serious and he's set up with his tie and his suit and he's talking important business on BBC and his kids just walk in the room. They want to add their 2 cents, right? And so for some of your team members, this is their reality. Their children are home, their spouses are home, they have neighbors, they live in big cities and they have neighbors running upstairs above their head, their animals are there. So with this new normal, when you're creating your community codes and your communication codes, really keep that in mind to give to really acknowledge that your teams may not be working remotely, even if they were before, they're not working remotely in the same way they had been. And if they're new to it, this is a whole new world for them. Samantha, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the things that we have to be really careful of is the punitive language that we have, right? So how can we create little bits of space for our team members so that when something does pop up, right? When a dog barks because somebody came to the door or someone, made a loud sound, that we can really incorporate that and make it just part of really the day. And how do people not feel sort of mortified and embarrassed when those things happen? And how do we instead really incorporate them as part of our team and as part of our new normal? And I think that we keep saying that, but the more that we can really make sure that our teams understand that we get it, the better off we'll be.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And I'd like to end speaking about creating community that these codes should be a guide, and that makes it easier for you to improve your team synergy now that you're working remotely and to get awesome work done. But in the event that it's not working, right, you should be able to have a flexibility. You want flexibility to change is needed, but I would recommend creating these collaboratively with your team and being able to then set the period of time for that you're dealing with this particular environment, to just use that as a trial and give it a chance. Work through a little bit of the kinks and see whether or not it's helpful. And at the end of the period of time that you're going to do a trial of your community codes and communication, at the end of it, you can recap and change things as needed. Okay.
Yeah, and so in this spirit, and we've talked a lot about how we get your teams moving, One of the things that I think we really have to remember is that our teams are kind of just in limbo. They don't feel connected. We've heard this time and time again. We've heard conversations about isolation. We've heard people say that they miss the office because there's just not that space of collaboration and being able to turn and get advice from a coworker. So this next section regarding collaboration is really important.
Yes, thank you so much, Samantha. I'm going to go a little bit into some of the best practices for collaboration. Now, I'm going to share with you, of all of the C's, this one may take a little bit of adjustment if you haven't been working in an agile working manner or with a large remote team. However, it's really simple, and once you get adjusted, it'll really help to get a lot of work done, and you may stick to it even when you get back into the office. So for collaboration, we recommend adopting an agile working practice. And so many technology companies work in an agile format where it's mostly project-based, and you have defined roles, and you're using some sort of project management tool. But for many of us who are in the office every day, where we have maybe your team members have one specific function all the time, your day-to-day kind of is fairly similar, and you all have your respective function. You may not be working in this manner, but I'm going to introduce it to you because while you're working remotely, you may have to do that. And we found that this model works best with remote teams. I've been using it with partners on teams with people who are living across the globe, from Germany to Switzerland to parts of Asia. We've been using this model to support high-level global corporations, although we're a distributed remote team. And so I'm going to walk you through the steps of it. So the first part of working in an agile fashion is to work in cycles. And what I mean by that is break down this period of time with COVID-19 or this period with coronavirus into a specific cycle. Let's say you look at it as 30 days, no more than 90 days. So you can break your projects down. You break your general full project for this COVID-19 period into a cycle, and then you have sub-cycles within it. So if your teams are working on specific goals, so you have an objective to get a certain product to a client, or to onboard a new training, or whichever the specific project may be, put it into a cycle with a specific time frame. So 2 weeks, 1 month, I would say no more than 90 days. When we begin projects with really large cycle times of 6 months to a year, or they don't have any defined period, we often can veer off of the primary objective, and then we start doing work over again, or we get something done and it doesn't meet exactly what we were hoping to get, so then we go back to point one. And it's much more difficult. It's pretty static, and it's much more difficult to make changes and still meet the deliverable deadline. So work in a cycle, define a specific framework. Then you create a briefing for that project. So we want to get this product out to our customer. Here's the briefing for this particular project. The customer has this situation. They've brought us on board to support them. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we measure success. Here's the ways we're going to work together to get it done. So get your briefing, just like the steps that I showed you in Collect and Clarify. Once again, sometimes project briefings is 1 page. They're 1 page. Sometimes they're 2. They should never be 10 or 15. Doesn't have to be that long. You really want the cycle to be defined enough where it's not overwhelming for you and your team. The next step is to define roles. In the environment now where you may be distributed as a remote team, but not everyone has technology. Some team members may have a tablet, some team members just have a phone, some have a laptop, and maybe you're unable to get everyone a laptop tomorrow. It's not in the budget to do that. Defining roles even matters more, because you can now work on specific projects and have team members take lead aspects of that project that they may not have led when they were in the office, when you all had the same access to each other, the same amount of technology, and you kind of had your norms that you'd been working with before. Defining roles now, you may have to open it up and have different team members taking on roles or leading different parts of the project than before. Then I would say using a cycle board to manage your task, or a Trello board we're much more familiar with. I'll show you an example next. And using a design, when you have a topic that's really important and you have to engage a larger group of your team for ideas, using an online design thinking tool, and we actually have one that we can use and support you. The last part is at the end of the cycle, that period of time, close it out with a debrief check-in and review what were the successes and what were the failures, and use that to then begin another cycle, potentially with the same client, potentially with the similar project goal, but doing it in cycles so that you have deliverables along the way, breaking it up. And so we recommend this for collaboration because it really does allow you to work a little bit in a bucket for that project, get something done, and then move on to the next one with your team. It's also easier to communicate about what the project is and actually see results and wins and celebrate them short term versus keeping it just one extensive project indefinitely. So here's an example of a cycle board. You've seen this Trello board. This is the one that Samantha and I use for our projects, that just really breaks down what's the pipeline, what are the things that we have to get done, when are they up for distribution, who's doing them, where your team can pick them, who's doing them, and when are they done. So it's a basic project management tool that we would suggest you use, and we can give you access to an online version of that. Next this is the online design thinking collaboration. I just wanted to show you a snapshot of the tool that we use. It allows us with just 1 day notice to provide a fully online collaborative interactive workshop around any topic that you have for your team. And we recommend this versus doing a conference call where everyone just jumps in and provide their ideas. Using a design thinking collaboration tool allows everyone to be heard, and it actually provides a more fun, interactive, and dynamic experience for collaboration. So those are things that we would suggest, that really the strategies and the best practices we would suggest around collaboration. So the first few C's that we've discussed, from collect and clarify to creating community and collaboration, really focused on building a structure for you to work together well and get things done. And what I'm going to do is hand it off to Samantha to speak about the best practices and the tools that we recommend for your team to remain highly engaged and performing. All right, I'll hand it off to Samantha.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, what is everybody, everyone sort of has a similar problem. One of them is that they don't feel connected. They feel isolated. They're missing, you know, the lunch run that they used to have, the water cooler chats, all of those kinds of things. And as a leader, they do look to you to sort of create some time and space to bring fun back, right? That was one of the reasons we all like to go to work. We enjoyed our coworkers, we enjoyed the work that we were doing, and hopefully we were having a fair amount of fun. So these are some strategies and ways that you can increase the engagement, increase the fun, and really get folks back to being mindful, not just of their interactions, but of their relationships, because that's what you really want. You want strong relationships on your team so that they can really begin to grow and foster. And hopefully these relationships will be able to return back to the office with you as well. So a couple of things, right? So we all do, it's not really about just scheduling another meeting block. It's really about how can we weave these things in to what we're already doing, in addition to creating some new opportunities. So for instance, you guys are already having team meetings. Create opportunities and moments to share. Create opportunities and moments for folks to, kind of let a little of the air out of their balloons a little bit by maybe, incorporating morning coffee cups in your team meetings, and just letting people pick their favorite mug and give a little example or a little description of why that's their favorite mug, and kind of a little history behind it. Think about creating some fun activities or games, like a conference call bingo, or counting the number of times you hear a fire truck or a barking dog, or any of those kinds of things that might be fun and specific to your team. Also create theme days. One of the theme days that I have instituted for my team at Creating Miss Jones is what we call messy bun days. And so that literally is everybody in a messy bun. For our gentlemen, they don't shave. And it really gives them an opportunity to have a little fun, be a little bit more casual, be a little bit more relaxed than they normally would. Also think about creating a virtual party where they can meet their coworkers, where they can meet their new coworkers, really having some guests come in. Maybe this week during your team meeting, you can have pets or children or spouses or whatever you want to do. And I know that as leaders, you think, oh, it's my job to sort of run all of this while we're in remote work and while we're experiencing COVID-19. But I really encourage you to engage your team members. Ask them for their ideas, ask them to help. They're going to really enjoy another task. For some of them, they've been short order cooks, or dog walkers, or jacks of all trades. So this could be a really fun project for folks to get out of their heads and think about something differently. And the team really, it is a great opportunity for you also, for those team members that are looking for increased leadership, increased responsibility, they're looking to grow. This is a great way that they can do that, and they can showcase their own skills and bring a little pizzazz of who they are in as well. And the last piece is about celebration. We're not celebrating anything right now. COVID-19 has us all walking around paying attention to the news and to the most somber facts. But what about, again, let's celebrate. Celebrate everything. Do it publicly. Do it often. Do it both privately and publicly. So when you're coaching during your one-on-ones, be intentional about highlighting people's wins, people's victories. Be intentional about saying thank you and showing your appreciation of folks. That's not happening in large amounts right now. So it's going to be so important for you to be able to do that. Also, create some opportunities where people actually have to review their week, not just run from task to task and check off the to-do boxes, but really ask them to spend maybe 30 minutes or so to sit down and review their week. What went well? What happened? What did you do well? How did you come through and be a great team member, or save a project, or maybe you closed a deal in this time? So really get them to even be celebrating their own wins, in addition to you celebrating. Also, encourage opportunities for teammates to thank each other, to shout each other out. Maybe some of your communication tools, you can create channels where they can do that. So it can be a shout out channel where you're sharing thank yous, or so and so really came through and prepared something for me, or Sonia was so great on the demo call yesterday. Those kinds of opportunities. Also, think about really just celebrating and acknowledging birthdays and work anniversaries. I think that those are the things that really can go by the wayside in this period of time, as we are battling coronavirus and those kinds of things, are the fact that people really, birthdays, right? We're not able to have parties and celebrations. So just acknowledge people's birthdays, right? Even a virtual card, or maybe you plan a virtual party if that's something that you want to do. Also think about how your team would best want to connect. Something, maybe they want to share something about themselves personally. So if somebody is a crafter and wants to share a craft project, maybe that's a really good opportunity. Also think about ways you can just incorporate the new coworkers, the new guests, right? So maybe you have time for a streaming party, where folks are going to stream a movie, and if that movie is able to be something that you can invite young people to, or spouses to, maybe that's a really great opportunity. Also, virtual parties. There are virtual karaoke software platforms where folks can do karaoke from wherever they are across the globe. Those are all the creativity and all of the things that your teams are really looking for to stay engaged, to stay kind of connected to one another. Also encourage them to do coffee chats and virtual coffee chats between each other, what I call water cooler chats. So they use our Zoom or our conference calling platform. Maybe they just do a group conversation on their phones, but encourage them to do those kinds of get together quick chats that they would have done in the kitchen, when they were at work, or while they were standing in line to use the restroom, or just go over to somebody's desk. And that's going to be so important to keeping and making sure that the culture of your organization and the culture of your team continues to be really, really strong as you prepare to ultimately go back into the office. And you really can balance fun and learning and professional development all at the same time. Maybe if you're doing a streaming party, you do a movie that speaks to your industry, or a movie that speaks to leadership, or some other motivational theme. This can be done with reading articles and everybody coming together to potentially give their perspective and their insights as well. And again, I think your team is so important here and can really be a great resource. So just because you're a leader doesn't mean that you have to be the only person that's coming up with these ideas. Your team, I think, can be really, really helpful and lead some of these charges. So consider giving them some projects and letting them run with it and see what they come up with.
Great. Yes, I couldn't stress that more, of using this framework to help you feel more comfortable with having a pulse on how you're doing and that you're getting work done, but also allowing it to provide your teams opportunity to have more autonomy or to lead projects so you're not overwhelmed. And so thank you so much, Samantha, for speaking to how we connect and celebrate as a team so that we remain refreshed while we're working. And just to share with you, createManageroo.com to provide ideas and tools for you. So if you run out of ideas for team building or for how to celebrate, you can visit those sites and they're ready to use tools that's there for you to access. So we've worked through our 6 C's: collect and clarify, community, collaboration, connecting with one another, and celebrating. And so this is where we've added many of the things we think are most important for your newly remote team, but we know in 60 minutes that is a lot. So going forward, we are here to support you at every step of the way. So we invite you to schedule a 60-minute session where we can walk you through, customize and walk you through one aspect, the most important aspect of the 6C framework for you. So if it's communication and creating community, or if it's getting a good briefing about what's going on and what you're going to do in this time frame, or if it's that you want to build an online design thinking workshop where it's a little bit more interactive and you're able to brainstorm with your team. We are here to support you through that. And so you can schedule a 60-minute session. In our follow-up email after this webinar, we will send you links with how you can go about doing that. Let's say that you have a larger project, your team, you need various parts of your team or many different people within your team to collaborate on finding new ideas for that. We can, with 1 day's notice, online design thinking workshop for you that actually walks your team through the experience. And we have an upcoming webinar coming up this Friday where we actually show you how the online design thinking tool works. And you're able to then demo it and experience it. You or your team members can experience it. So, and we really wanted to, we're hosting that webinar so that you can see what it's like to work in a more interactive, dynamic manner for brainstorming online while you're a remote team. So you don't just have conference call after conference call. We also want to share with you that our services are all set your price. So many of us may be familiar with Priceline, Name Your Price, or a few other organizations that have pay what you wish models. We are offering our services, our consulting sessions, our online workshops on the pay what you wish basis. During this time frame, we want to make sure teams all have access to tools that they need and are able to get as much what they want and to hit their goals as newly remote teams. So, and we focus on value. So the way it works is we'll provide you a service with exceptional value based on what you need and your objectives are. Then after that service, you provide us feedback and set a price. There are no suggested prices, no minimum or maximum. We only suggest that you assess the value and set a fair price. And so we're really happy to offer our services to you in that way. And lastly, we ask you to stay in touch. In a second, we're going to move on to the questions you have, but we want to share with you how you can stay connected with us on the social media platforms. So go ahead and just follow us on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. You can follow us on all three. We'll be providing weekly updates with tools and resources that's available for you and your remote team.
Yeah, well, I know that we have about another few minutes, and so I want to try to get through as many of our questions as we can. So one of the questions is, will we share the deck? We will share the replay of this webinar with you, and so that will definitely have you can replay and rewind and all of those kinds of things. And then we also have, if you decide to do the consultation with us, part of our bundles of services there will also have some quick one-pagers and some quick studies regarding all of the information that we've covered in the deck.
Yeah, so sorry, just to add on that, Samantha. So basically the tools that you've seen from the community codes, collaboration, the community codes, the communication codes, how to put it together, creating a briefing, all of that we will have, we have a bundle package that can guide you through creating that for your team. And it comes with the 60-minute session.
Okay, I have a question that somebody has just sent to me privately, and it says, what should we do if our teams are not accustomed to working in these models? How difficult would the transition be?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think that part of why some of the framework that you're creating, it's like in your briefing, we're more familiar with creating, kind of summarizing your situation. So if you begin with your briefing and can outline how that some of your team members, this is new, just acknowledging first of all to your team, this is new, guys, right? And it's going to help us, and giving the team, reassuring the team that this is the learning process, so it's not punitive. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then also working in a small enough cycle where you say, hey, we're gonna plan our action steps for the next 30 days. And within that, you can go through, you can have smaller trainings where you're able to teach them how to use some of the models, or you don't implement all of it. You take one that's really critical, that's going to get you closest to where you want to go as a remote team, and you start with that. So Samantha and I have added so much here that has the full span of how you can lead your remote team. However, you may want to start with the one that's most critical, that can get you to where you want to go. And when you are expanding past that, if you reach a roadblock, you can reach out to us, because we have extensive experience getting teams up and on board and able to use new tools and implement them within a shorter frame of time.
Okay, another question I have here is from, is how soon can I set up a meeting with you all? We're going to have a follow-up email that should come out in about an hour after this call ends, and it will have a Calendly link inside of it, and you can use that and schedule our earliest available appointment.
Mm-hmm. Which will likely be tomorrow. We'll have time slots available for this week and next. And so you can choose what works best for you and your team.
Okay. I have another question that came to me privately. And this question is, this question is about the online design. How can you ensure that all of my team members will be able to participate in this training, or in the online thinking, or is it just kind of the most vocal?
Oh, that is a great question, whoever asked it. The reason we use the online design thinking tool is so that every team member can submit their feedback. We've used this process locally in person, but we also have it available digitally. And the reason we could use this dynamic process is so that you're not yelling into the void of a conference call and only the people most vocal will share their feedback and their ideas, and everyone else kind of jumps on board with whoever is the most vocal, or it becomes political and others don't really share their feedback. So because that happens often in traditional brainstorming, this model allows every team member to put their insights into and respond to the questions that we have. They're able to put it into our engine, and then we can see the results in real time. So we run the design thinking workshops like it with a start and a finish, and it's just like an engine, where at the end of it you have specific ideas, concrete ideas with descriptions, and actually a ranking of how those ideas resonated with your team. And that could be for a 2-hour workshop, it could be for a 60-minute workshop, a 2-hour workshop, or a half-day workshop, depending on the level and the scale of your topic. And the reason we love this so much is just for what you asked, so that everyone can add their input. Those who are more introverted, those are a little bit more shy, those who may be a little bit more critical, and those who are highly engaged and highly vocal. Everyone will be able to contribute. And on Friday, when we have the webinar, we'll walk through it, so you'll actually be able to see what how it looks and how it works.
So if we have any more questions, those are all the questions that I have. Anybody else want to put a question in the chat box? Okay.
Okay, this is great. We thank you so much for joining. You may leave this workshop with additional questions that come to mind. You can feel free to send us an email at support@manageroo.com. Our recap email will go into details of all of the ways to remain engaged with us. And we really want to support you along the way with your team. There's no question that we will not answer for you. So stay engaged, stay connected with us. And we'll support you along the way as you are leading your newly remote team, or just adjusting things for your team, your team that's been working remote. So thank you so much for joining. Samantha, do you want to add anything as we're closing?
Nope, I just want to say, everyone stay safe in this very chaotic time. And, thank you for the work that you do as a leader to keep both your team safe. And I know that your organizations appreciate your commitment to the individuals that work for you. And thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.